looking at quite a big topic, a big theme, but Bill, there is something that I know about you, but I'm not sure.
Here we go.
I'm not sure that the rest of the world knows, so we're going to put it on a world platform.
My mind is racing there. What out of a million possibilities this might be?
So we're talking about about Christians and kind of believing that Jesus is the only way to God and other religions. So I know that if you had to choose, if you weren't a Christian and you were to choose a different affiliation with
outrageous.
a religion,
Okay.
What religion is it that you would pick? I feel quite smug about this, actually. What religion would you pick if you weren't a Christian, Bill?
When am I hosting and you're in this seat,
we have
Emma?
no plans for that yet.
Really? It's funny how that works. Just to say, for any Christian friends or non-Christian friends watching, I have no intention of changing my religious affiliations. I am very happy and very committed to following Jesus. However, if I were to choose another religion, I'd be a little bit drawn to Jediism. Mm-hmm. So, I think it was the 2001 census. 2001, there was this big thing, and in a number of countries there was an effort made to get Jedi as a recognized religion on the census. Do you remember this?
I do remember it, yeah.
And it was quite, it was a joke thing really, but it kind of became a bit more serious as it went on. So you can now get Jedi priests who can marry you, apparently.
Wow.
But it was quite successful in the England and Wales census, and it became I think it was the fifth most known religion, the fifth biggest religion according to the census, came from nowhere to being, so there was Christianity, no religious affiliation, Islam, Hindu, and then it was Jedi. And then you can go on Wikipedia. And
the fountain of all knowledge, obviously.
Yeah, all Star Wars wisdom to be found on Wikipedia. And you can see there all the tenets of Jediism, and there are 21 maxims to living a Jedi life.
Wow.
But there you are. As I say, I have no intention of converting to Jediism, but thank you for the question.
You are welcome. And I guess thinking of something maybe unique and interesting, we came across an article just earlier this week about a church moskagogue. A church moskagogue, it's an actual word, well it is now, or it's certainly what it's being dubbed, and there's an initiative that's happening in Germany, and it is where three of the world religions, so Christians, Jews, and Muslims, are choosing to kind of move into this new facility where they will all operate within one building. So they will all have their own separate kind of worship services, if you like, but they would come together for religious celebrations, commemorations, celebrations, just those religious holidays as well. They would come together for those in a way to move towards unity and harmony between three of the world religions. It's certainly a unique idea.
It's certainly unique, probably not coming soon to a church anywhere near you, but it does raise that question. If we're looking at what about other religions, there are similarities, and it's a thing that you hear quite often, isn't it, where people say, well, basically all religions are much the same, aren't they? And you can see similarities. I mean, these three religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they're all what they call monotheistic religions, religions where there is the worship of one God rather than multiple gods. Or if you compared, say, Christianity and Buddhism, you would see some things that are that are similar to each other, like a concern for world peace would be a thing that you would find actually in a number of religions. Prayer of some sort would be in pretty much every religion. And all religions would have some element of afterlife. I'm not sure about Jediism, actually. I'll need to look into that and see if there's an afterlife. Look it up on Wikipedia, see if there's an afterlife in Jediism. But then I guess when you start to look a little bit under the surface and ask, well, what sort of afterlife? So in Buddhism, you find that actually the aim is pretty much to cease to exist, which is very, very different from an afterlife view of Christianity that would talk about a bodily resurrection and then an eternity in community with God. Or differences like the way to God, because that's pretty crucial. What is the way to get to God? And in Hinduism, it's all about your karma and looking to have good karma so that you eventually get off that cycle of reincarnation. And in Islam, it's all about the 5 pillars and pressing into these to get close to Allah, and then in Buddhism, it's about following the fourfold path. There was a conference of religious leaders from different nations and different religions, and C.S. Lewis was at this conference, and he saw a group of religious scholars from different religions having a friendly but clearly heated debate. And he wandered up to the table and he said, what are you talking about? And they said, we're trying to decide what is the distinctive of Christianity. And he said, oh, that's easy, it's grace. And he wandered off, and then they looked at each other and they talked about it a bit, and they said, yeah, that makes sense, because other religions, you get to God by what you do, by your actions. But in Christianity, you get to God by what has been done for you, by what Jesus has done for us on the cross. And it's that difference of it's do versus done, and that's where grace comes in. Grace is it's unmerited favor. We get something that we didn't earn ourselves, but in Christianity, salvation, access to God, comes through what God has done for us, comes through grace. So we're looking at this question: is Christianity the only way to God? Is Jesus the only way to God? What about other religions? Well, what does the Bible have to say about that? Actually, when you go to the Bible and when you go to the words of Jesus, you find something really quite uncompromising. This is John chapter 14. And Jesus says this, it's Thomas says to Jesus, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So the question is, what is the basis for trusting what Jesus has to say there? C.S. Lewis, who I guess I'm going to mention 2 or 3 times this evening, because I think he's got a lot of good stuff to say into this area. But C.S. Lewis set up what he called a trilemma. And he said, logically, Jesus is one of 3 things. He's a liar, or he's a lunatic, or he is the Lord. So he's either just telling you a load of porkies, or he's mad, or he is who he actually says he is. We're conscious, by the way, that that we've gone a little bit blurry. You might consider that an improvement while I'm talking, but that's fine, and we'll carry on anyway with that. So C.S. Lewis sets it up like this. He says, Jesus claimed some really strong things. So he claimed to forgive sins. He claimed that he existed before time. He said at one point, before Abraham was born, I am. And I am is the Hebrew name that was for God himself. He says, those who have seen me have seen the Father. Those who've seen me have seen God. And he says even more directly, I and the Father are one. So, liar, lunatic, or Lord? Well, some say, well, no, he was just a good teacher. Billy Connolly once said, I can't believe in Christianity, but I think Jesus was a wonderful man. The thing is, by what he claimed, Jesus effectively said, look, don't call me teacher. Don't call me prophet. He's not leaving that option open to us. So C.S. Lewis says this, coming soon. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level of a man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come up with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great teacher. He has not left that option open to us. He didn't intend to. Okay, so not just a good teacher. Maybe he was a liar, and he said all these things about himself. He made these incredible claims. The question is, why would you die for something that you know to be a lie? And in particular, why would you die the most excruciating death? You know, the crucifixion was the worst form of torture known in the Roman Empire. But at one point, when Jesus was arrested and was clearly heading towards the cross, there was a group of religious leaders said to him, "So tell us the truth. Are you the Messiah?" And if he was just lying, that was the point at which that was the time, if ever there was a time to say, well, look, this has just been a little bit blown out of proportion. And I meant this a little bit more metaphorically. He didn't. He said, yes, I am. And you'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of glory at the right hand of the Father. So he was pressing right into that, all of the claims that he had made. And you read the Gospels and you see in Jesus the most congruent life. You read the various historical records that there are for the life of Jesus, and you see that he walked the talk. Liar just doesn't fit. So maybe he was a lunatic. Maybe he was mad. Well, that's an option. And if you think that's a possibility, what I would say is read the Gospels. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you'll find there the greatest moral teaching that you could find anywhere. And there's a beauty and just a sense and a meaning to it that hasn't been surpassed in 2,000 years. And that's not, I just can't see that in any way as the words of a madman. I read a little while ago an interview with Bono, the front man for U2, and he says this: so what you're left with is either Jesus was who he said he was, the Messiah, or he was a complete nutcase. The idea that the entire course of civilization for over half the globe could have its fate changed and turned upside down by a nutcase, for me, that's far-fetched. And, ultimately, I think it comes down to a choice. Do you follow the evidence and then make a response to Jesus? And will you weigh up the evidence and be honest with the evidence as you see it? The Bono quote goes on to say this. He says, "If only we could be a bit more like Jesus, the world would be transformed. When I look at the cross of Christ, when I see up there is all my stuff and everybody else's, and I ask myself a question a lot of people have asked, who is this man? And he was who he said he was. And was he who he said he was, or was he just a religious nut? And there it is. That's the question. And no one can talk you into or out of it. That's your decision and mine with what we do with the evidence on Jesus.
So we have, we've got some questions, but we've also got a thought when we kind of pose the question about religion and something and that kind of thought. So someone has said, for me, Christianity is the most appealing faith as it is the only one where the God sacrificed his innocent son as an atonement offer for me as a sinner. So some big words in that.
Yeah.
Should I read it again, and then do you want to explain atonement? Because I think that's probably...
I think as well, that thing of the God who sacrifices his innocent son, I always want to say with that's true. The Father gave up the Son, but also biblically, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are also all one. And there's a verse that says God was in Christ, so a sense of Jesus choosing to sacrifice himself as much as the Father sacrificing his Son. But atonement, atonement for us. The atonement is a word that kind of started in the Old Testament, and it kind of means a covering over. So they talked about the blood of animal sacrifices that would. And Emma's phone bounces nicely. There will be a short break while she goes after her phone.
Well, always exciting, isn't it?
Absolutely. Where was I? Before that excitement. So the blood of the sacrifice would atone for, it would cover over your sin. And then in the New Testament, it's the blood of Jesus that is the kind of permanent sacrifice that atones for, and so it's a sense of covering over, getting rid of the things that separate us from God to bring us back together to God. One description I once heard for atonement is to just kind of separate the word and make it at one meant to bring us back to being one with God.
Great. There you go. So if you didn't understand what the word atonement meant, you hopefully do now.
There we are.
Hopefully.
Sunday Live, jargon buster.
Indeed. So a question for you, because they're going to come your way.
Good.
So if Jesus was who he said he was, isn't Jesus just one way to God? Don't all paths lead up the same mountain, as they say?
Okay, so that's saying that even saying that Jesus was who he said he was, that he was and is God, does that mean that he is the only route, or are there other ways? I guess one thing with that is we need to take seriously, and this is where it comes back to what is Jesus claiming, and what do we do with what he claims? So he doesn't claim to be one way to God. He claims in that verse in John 14 that I read earlier, where he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. So there's an exclusivity in that claim. And I guess the question would then be, why? Why is that claim of Jesus so exclusive? Is he just kind of, is it just kind of looking to set up a monopoly here among the religions, which isn't something that kind of fits the culture, the mood of today? But then I guess it comes down to the cross, and actually what that thing that you read earlier about, where the God who is willing to give himself and to give his son in sacrifice. And the cross was the most horrendous thing, physically. There was no other type of torture, anything like it. And even the Romans, who were really quite barbaric in so many ways in terms of their implementation of their justice, they banned crucifixion eventually because, they said it was too cruel. They could throw people to the lions, but they weren't gonna crucify people. And then there was the weight of on the cross. Jesus took the weight of the sins of the world on his shoulders. That was what brought that atonement, that oneness back with God. And the weight and the pain of that, and then coming out of that, the separation from God the Father that Jesus endured as he cried out in anguish, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" And so the question is, why would the Father put Jesus through that? Why would Jesus willingly sign up for all of that if you could just kind of like signpost and say, well, you can go to that religion or that religion? So it comes back for me to the claims of Jesus. He says, I am the only way, and that's why I paid such an enormous price for love of you.
Yeah. Wow, and I have another tough question for you, so they're coming.
Good.
So lots of people sincerely follow other religions, or none, and they have never heard of Jesus. So how is it fair that they would go to hell?
Yeah, nice, simple question there.
Absolutely.
Last week there was a question when we asked about what sort of questions would you like us to address. There was something along the lines of looking at hell. So we will look at that specifically in a Sunday Live coming sometime soon. But just kind of have a little go at an answer to that now. There's a lot in the Bible that talks about how God reveals himself to us. There's a verse in the Psalms that says, the heavens declare the glory of God. And for me, I guess it comes down to a trust in God's character. I know that God is loving and that he is merciful and that he has all knowledge. And while God is God and we don't make his decisions, and it's just as well, ultimately, I think we can trust that he will do well by people. So personally, I think that if someone lives by, how would I put it, by the light that they have received and they've never had the opportunity to know and to respond to Jesus. The Bible is very clear that once you have heard about Jesus, you have a responsibility there. But where people have not heard or not adequately heard about Jesus, I think there's grace and mercy in how God deals with us. Actually, C.S. Lewis, again, sorry, we're on a bit of a C.S. Lewis roll, but the Narnia Chronicles, the most famous of these is The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, but the last one, in the last battle, there's a scene where it's kind of on the way up to what's kind of heaven, I guess, and there's Aslan the lion, who is the Jesus figure in the book. And he encounters this man, this soldier, who is a worshipper, or has all his life been a worshipper of Tash. And Tash was an abhorrent god, a horrible god who demanded child sacrifice and cruelty. But this man saw Tash as God, had never heard of Aslan, and he worshipped Tash with a love and a devotion. And when he spoke to Aslan, he was distraught to discover that Aslan was this one true God. And Aslan said to him, all the worship that you have offered, thinking you were offering it to Tash, has actually been to me all along. And I think one day, when we get to heaven and we meet God, I think we'll be surprised at some of the people who are there by his grace. So where we have the opportunity to hear about Jesus and to respond to Jesus, we need to grab that. But for people who haven't heard, who don't know, I think God has his ways of judging in mercy and goodness and love and justice.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to say that we aren't God. So we don't know. We don't actually know. We can surmise or read scripture that way, but we don't actually know. And I think that is a real beautiful mystery of God. The fact that God didn't tell us everything, and I don't think he wants us to know everything either, in that we can revel in that mystery of God and not knowing. But I think it's also really important to say that when I die and I meet God face to face, he's not going to ask me about someone else's life. He's going to ask me about my life and how I have lived.
Yeah.
And so as much as it is obviously great to be concerned about others, I think we also have to be aware of our own journey that we are on, whether we personally know God or not. And I think I think it's really great to be concerned about others, but actually I'm going to be asked about my life and my journey, and therefore I need to be concerned about the decisions that I make and whether I choose God or not.
Yeah.
And then to potentially look at others, possibly.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, and I feel you've been asking me all the questions. So with that in mind, Emma, what does that look like for you? Because we're talking about, can we have this certainty in Jesus as the way to God? And you are speaking with a confidence in your relationship with Jesus. So, it's a big investment though, isn't it? Because it's kind of, if you say, I'm going to follow Jesus, and it's not a tick box thing. It's, if you're saying Jesus is Lord, then it's everything or it's nothing, isn't it? And you're putting all your eggs in one basket. What makes you so certain of that?
You talk about it like an investment, and I think we make lots of different investments. If you buy a house, you're making an investment in a house. If you buy a car, that's an investment. And I think we make lots of big decisions of things to invest in, and also small ones. And I think the thing about investments is that you tend to get something in return. And there are lots of different types of investments. So, with that kind of return, if I invest in a house, I get a house. If I invest in a car, I get a car. But then there are these other types of investments. Like I invest in my job every day. And as I invest in my job, as I give maybe a little bit of my skill, a little bit of my knowledge, in return I learn things, and I am stretched, and I am molded a little bit by my job. I think every day I invest in my child. I give him who I am. I love him. I give him a part of me. And in return, he definitely stretches me and challenges me and does things to a human being that you didn't think was possible until you have children. And they do that kind of stuff. And he grows me as a mother, but also as Emma. And I think all of these investments are risky, but when I decided to trust Jesus and give him my life, this investment didn't seem so risky to me. In that I read about the Jesus in the Bible who healed people, who befriended people, he cared for them, he loved them. So why would the Jesus that I read about in the Bible behave like that in the Bible, but then not be that with me? It wouldn't be any different, which means it can't be a risky investment. It seems like a sensible investment. And then the other reason why I've invested my life in Jesus, because I've experienced him. I became a Christian when I was an early teenager, and through that journey, I have experienced a ridiculous amount of joy by following Jesus. But through life, I've also experienced a real deep hurt, a deep pain. And in those darkest, deepest, most hurtful moments of mine, I have found God right with me. In the midst of all of that, I have found this unshakable, this deep, heartfelt peace that comes with me. And why would I not want to invest my life in that? And I think I've also learned so much from following Jesus. I've learned how to love others, love my enemy, care for people, feed the sick, look after the sick, feed the hungry, be there for the poor, and befriend the lonely. These are all the things that Jesus talks about. And so I have learned from him. I am trying to live an others-centered life. And then I think, even if I die and I find out that all of these feelings and all of this stuff with Jesus is a lie and it's false, to have tried my best to live an others-centered life where I do my best to live by others first, then surely I have still lived a better life with Jesus than without him.
Yeah, and that's very powerful. But yeah, I love that description, and that's a thought that I've often had, that even if eternity was taken out of the picture, which is which is not, but the difference that following Jesus makes right now to how I live, and how my character has been shaped and is being shaped is enormous.
Yeah, he just changes everything in a way that when you read the Bono quote earlier, I think it was, that someone can't talk you into it, just like someone can't talk you out of it. It has to be a decision. It has to be a choice that you make. I think that is us out of time. We are just about there. So next week we are continuing with some of our big questions. So next week we are looking at the question, can faith and science live together? And we're going to be joined virtually by our guest Nathan Allen, who's going to help us explore that theme for the evening. So thank you very much to everyone who joined us this evening. If you liked what you heard and what you saw tonight, then if you hit like and if you subscribe to our page, then you'll always know when we're broadcasting next, which is next Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. And then we will be here back next Sunday evening at 7:30. And providing we don't go into any form of lockdown, we will be back in our normal space on the sofa, so you will be able to join us in person. And finally, in the words of Bill, if you tickle the notification bell, then you will, don't forget to tickle, and then you will know when we are definitely broadcasting next. So please do join us next week in person or online. I hope you have a great week. God bless and good night.
Good night.